Today, as we open our religious education program for the fall and winter months and spring, we're also celebrating the gifts of our parish of time and talent, represented by the various ministries we have. I'm so tempted not to even talk about the gospel, because the gospel is really hard. I'm sure you were hearing that and thinking, well, that doesn't sound like Jesus. Hate your father and mother, your children, your spouses. Doesn't sound like Jesus. Or to deny yourself of all material things. Yeah, how am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to have a home? How am I going to be able to have a vehicle to get around? Those are tough questions. And rightfully so, we wonder, what did Jesus mean? And first of all, keep in mind that we're getting this translation from an old translation, from an older translation. And so when we see the word hate, we need to realize that at the time that Jesus was speaking these words, there was no word for in between hate and love. In the vocabulary of that time, there just wasn't a word. So either you loved or you hate. I love chocolate cake, okay? But does that do with the, if I don't like chocolate cake, does that mean I hate chocolate cake? But there's no word, so I would say, well, I hate chocolate cake. And that was the struggle of trying to listen to these words. Because would Jesus want us? He who came and said, the most important commandment of all is to love God and to love your neighbor. In the Old Testament, what was the fourth commandment? Honor your father and your mother. How many of the other prophets and the writings always spoke about the reverence that we should have for our parents? That was built into the whole Jewish system of the ancient times, as the honor of your elders. And so this had to be shocking, as it is to us, as it was to the people. But what Jesus, I think, basically was trying to say, don't forget, it's important to put me first. And the reason he says that, and I think it makes sense after you think about it a moment, the reason he says that is that if we love Jesus as we should, and if we practice what Jesus practiced and lived and gave by example, it was compassion, it was kindness, it was forgiveness, it was healing, it was encouragement. And that if we did that, we'd be honoring our parents. We'd be honoring those that are closest to us. And we would be using the gifts that we have from God to share with others if we really follow Jesus. And so it begins to make sense what Jesus is saying. Certainly he wouldn't want us to hate. It'd be such a contradiction to everything he ever taught. But he is saying, I want you to put me first, because if you put me first, everything else will fall into place. It's when we don't put God into first place that hatred begins, discrimination begins, social injustices begin. But when we do put God first, then we see a whole different vision of what God wanted to teach us. Today we are doing two other special things, Certainly the importance of taking care of our children and bringing religious education to them. I remember one little girl, and I'm sure this was not an 8th grader or a 7th grader, I'm sure of this. But one little one came up to me and she said, I'm so excited today. And I said, why? Religious classes are starting again. Now, 7th and 8th grader would, But it is an exciting moment for the parish, because it's part of who we are as a parish. Disciples and stewards. Disciples wanting to share the good news of Jesus to our little children and to their parents. We're not taking away the responsibility from the parents. We're assisting the parents. But it's their primary obligation, their first obligation as since baptism, to bring the good news of Jesus. And so we're beginning that ministry today. And we want our children to have a good experience of religion, not just a classroom experience, but an experience that's life-giving, that's part of their everyday experience. And that begins at home, begins here. We're celebrating the liturgy together. There's a whole different atmosphere when they're here. Huh? I can just feel, I don't know, maybe it's me, but I just feel the energy when all of our children are gathered together. It's a beautiful sign. Secondly, today we'll be also celebrating our stewardship fair, in which we're recognizing all of the talent and gifts that this parish offers through its people. When I grew up centuries ago, church ministry was not like this. Church ministry was what Father wanted. That was church ministry. And Father decided and did everything except he'd get the woman to take care of the cleanup. Maybe they would do that. There would be servers, but only boys. It was a different kind of an experience. And then when the council came around and began to realize that can't do it alone. But not only because we can't do it alone, that's not a good enough reason that our people have a right to be involved in the ministry of the church. So with the council, a flourish of ministries began to happen. That we just didn't have one organ and one organist. Caleb, No, we had choirs begin to be developed, and we began to have cantors, and then we had the ministers of Eucharist finally to help, And again, because they have the priesthood of God through their baptism. Then we had the developing of readers, and then ushers to welcome people, and then those wonderful saints who do the religious education classes, those that visit the sick, those that go and get involved in social ministries, that Feed Our Hungry here in Edwardsburg, Food Pantry. There's just numerous organizations and things going on. That's a sign of understanding that I'm called. And I think I love that theme, Called and sent. Sent to share our gifts. And so after Mass today, we'll have those tables set up with lots of little treats in there and little things to entice you to stay. But we'd like you at least, through courtesy, to pass by, recognize those that are there, but recognize the ministries. And then, if you got it in your heart, what can I do? What little thing could I do? Because I often think a lot of people don't want to get involved because they figure I'm going to be asked on every week. Well, if we got enough volunteers, you don't get asked every week. You get asked maybe once or twice a month. And that's not too much to give to the church and a little bit of service. And we all have the gifts. We all have the talents, different ones. And there's different ministries. You can help plant flowers, because Father Bob doesn't know a thing about that. But there's just constant different kinds of things. And so today, what we're really, even though that gospel's pretty hard, wasn't the atmosphere I would have loved to have created today, but today is really about our discipleship that leads to stewardship. That I have chosen to follow Jesus, and I want to share my gifts, talents, so that others can know the love of Jesus. And so we look forward to that. And now in just a few seconds, we're going to honor our new teachers that are involved in a religious education program. We're going to ask God's blessing upon them, because they truly are saintly in doing, but yet we have, one of the good things about Our Lady of the Lake is we have perfect children, so it's not going to be an issue. But they do make a lot of sacrifice, do wonderful things, and so we want to honor them by asking God's blessings upon their ministry. And then we're going to special blessing on you, parents the primary educators of your children. We're just helpers. You are the primary educators. And what we do in the classroom will have no effect if it isn't seen and lived in your homes. And so we're really going to ask God's special blessings upon you also.